We'll go ahead and call this working session to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker,
Here.
Hill,
Here.
Mingus,
Here.
Sutherland,
Here.
Mayor Call.
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Very good. This evening's working session of the City Council will be a public forum on potential city regulation of cannabis and cannabis businesses under the recently adopted Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act, recreational marijuana. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up. Looks like we got a big crowd, so people probably have a lot to say this evening. But as what we're going to do is, this is also informative for both the public as well as the council members up here. I'm going to ask three individuals to lay the framework. For those that don't know, the law itself is pretty comprehensive. It's not cut and dry like you see in the paper or what people may or may not think. The state legalized the sale and use of recreational marijuana effective January 1, 2020, and the onus got put back on the municipalities on whether or not you allow the sale of it or restrict the use, restrict the sale, prohibit the sale. So tonight we have from the city's attorney's office, Scott Brunton. Not sure if it's going to be the deputy chief or the chief speaking tonight on behalf of the police department. Sounds like it's the chief. And then Ty Livingston will also give some touch points. After we've given an overview of what we've kind of delved into, we'll open it up for some public input because your input does matter a lot. We will be taking no formal action this evening. So I want to make that clear. I know some people questioned a working session. There will be no formal action this evening. So with that being said, Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, my goal here is to try to give a quick overview. I did provide everybody here in the room, I think, the council and as well as the members that got a copy of just a real quick overview of the Recreational Cannabis Act, as I'll refer to it as. Just to give an outline and a framework for tonight, like you said. And I'm going to try to hit the highlights. I don't plan to read this word for word. That's not my goal, but to kind of hit on the high points. My main goal in putting this together was to kind of provide some information on what the city can and cannot prohibit and regulate. So first thing I thought I'd make clear is what the city cannot regulate or prohibit, and that is currently the new law will allow recreational possession for adults 21 and over. The city can't do anything. The city has to allow that possession. It also allows recreational use in a private residence for an adult 21 and over. I also want to reference the medical possession. That hasn't changed. So if someone has a medical card, they're still allowed to possess medical cannabis, and that can be any age. And that's the person, and if it's a person under 18, their caregiver, they can possess medical cannabis. And part of the new law is a change, or the new law, recreational marijuana law. It's, like you said, quite comprehensive. It also allows medical grow, as I would call it. It allows a person with a medical license to grow up to 5 cannabis plants in their home. And it's to be out of the public eye. It's not to be just out in your garden, but it does allow up to 5 plants for those with medical certificates to use the cannabis. So the city can't do anything about that. That's what's allowed by the law, and so the city can't regulate in that area. But what the city can do, which is the next part, is there's basically 4 things I would point out. It can continue to regulate, prohibit possession, and issue ordinance citations and write ordinances that would prohibit use over the permitted use. So if you have more than what's allowed for recreational use, that's still would still be an ordinance violation. If you use it in a place that's restricted, the Cannabis Act does specifically restrict use in certain places. That would be like public buildings, schools, school buses, in vehicles. So that's a restricted place. So the city can continue to regulate that through its ordinances. The city can also regulate consumption in public places, and we'll talk about that here a little further, what I mean by that. and as well as regulate on-site consumption at adult-use cannabis businesses. So we'll get into that just a little bit more here. I also want to point out that the city can regulate or prohibit all adult-use cannabis businesses. So it can choose to regulate them or just outright prohibit them. And I know that we've all seen in the local media some local municipalities that have prohibited all types of adult-use cannabis businesses. Just as a quick hit to talk about the different type of adult cannabis businesses, for discussion's sake, because the law basically defines the following. They define what a dispensary is, which is a point of sale for cannabis. There's cultivation centers, processors, infusers, craft growers, and transporters. And you can read what they all mean, kind of a quick synopsis I provided. The only thing I would point out is what the term craft grower, as I interpret that, is think of a craft brewery. I mean, it's set up to, the way the law is set up is essentially to allow a business to come in and grow, to be a grower, and that they can process the cannabis and then sell it at their establishment for use on site if it's permitted. So a craft grower can get licenses. Each one of these types of businesses have to have a license from the state of Illinois to operate in the cannabis business field. And for craft growers, they can obtain a license to be the craft grower, a dispensary, and a processor, and an infuser, all those licenses. So that allows them to essentially operate, like I say, like a craft brewer in that kind of aspect. So as far as kind of the last thing I just want to hit on real quick as well is the act has been clearly written. I think it's been well published as the sponsors of the bill at the state level. The act's been written in a manner that leaves a lot of discretion to the local municipalities. So you can basically prohibit it outright as long as you, like I said, we can't do anything about what's already permitted as far as possession and use that's allowed under the law, but you can prohibit any cannabis businesses in the city, or you can allow and regulate them. And so the areas that, when we look at cannabis use businesses, when I talk about those businesses, I'm talking about all 6 types of businesses. Most people probably think dispensaries, but realize that it's just more than that. And so it's those other types of businesses I described. So when we look at regulating businesses, if you choose to allow a business, you can regulate the location of what the businesses, and what I mean by that is probably typically the type of zoning districts you would allow them to be in. The number, you can also limit the number of each type of cannabis business, so you don't have to allow the same, or you don't have to allow all of them. You could just allow one type if you so chose. You can set separation from what I call separation from sensitive areas, which is you can create distance requirements for these businesses to set up shop. They, for instance, I mean, typically what people would think of would be schools and daycare centers, places where children frequent. You can define what those are, and you can require them to be a certain feet, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet away, however you want to define that. There are just three state restrictions that are set forth in this act, the Recreational Cannabis Act. That is, dispensaries have to be 1,500 feet apart from each other. Infusers cannot be in residential areas, and craft growers cannot be in residential areas and must be 15,000 feet, or 1,500 feet, I'm sorry, from other growers or cultivation centers. So that's all the state defines. It's really up to the city then to decide if they want to allow it, how they regulate it under each of those types of things. Last thing I would point out is the law also talks about hours of operation for dispensaries. And basically the state has said that they can operate between 6 and 10 p.m. So the way I'm interpreting that, you have to understand there's a lot of interpretation to be done yet. So I would understand that means no dispensaries can be open after 10 p.m. until 6 in the morning. And I guess my interpretation at this point is you can refine those hours. You just can't allow them to operate between 10 at night and 6 in the morning. And that's just for dispensaries. And typically, I just point out last that most of these types of regulations will be handled through your zoning code. If you prohibit it, that would just be kind of a general business prohibition, but if you do regulate, that's done through the zoning code and would have to go through the zoning go process, which would go before the zoning board, and then there would be a public hearing at that stage about the exact proposal for regulation. And last, I would try to cover real quickly the municipal sales tax. I think most of you are aware of that. If the city does allow it, dispensaries, they can add a tax of up to 3%. The last thing I just want to cover really quickly is on-site consumption. The municipality can allow on-site consumption, and that is not limited just to cannabis businesses. So you can allow, in a different type of business setting, on-site consumption. So that's permitted under the law. Basically, what the law says is that cannabis cannot be used in a public place, and then it creates exceptions to that. And a public place is extremely broad. It's defined under the law as any place you are that you can be reasonably seen by another person. So that's pretty broad. And it also defines public buildings as being public places, which would make sense. But the law it accepts out private residences from public places. I've already talked about that. It also accepts out smoke shops if you want to allow that use at a smoke shop. And last, any defined business location you may want to allow. So that could be, I guess the best example, just to kind of give you some ideas, that there's cannabis that's injected into lotions. It can be used for massage oils. You could allow a wellness center to use that on patients when applying massage therapy. So that's kind of a different thing you might not normally think about. But that's the type of business you could permit. I'm not saying you have to, but it's just that wide open area that you're working in. I've already run way longer than I wanted to, so I'm going to turn it over at this point.
Very good. Thanks, Scott. Ty?
Thank you, Mayor. So with respect to zoning, we're taking a look at least starting to take a look at a code update, largely based upon the zoning regulations we put in place for the medical usage some years ago. And based upon also the city's experience with that function, certainly working with the folks from public safety. And this would be something that would be presented to the zoning board to begin with, and then back to the council here at a later date, but it could go to zoning board as soon as next month. The zoning would be proposed to be limited, just as we have with medical, to B3 and M1. So that's our most extensive commercial district, and then our light industrial, which is the M designation. Very similar to what we did with medical, would not be permitted in residential areas. Also, the other requirement would require a special use. And so in those cases, you have to provide, there's notification provided to nearby property owners. You'd also have the opportunity for a public hearing at the zoning board meeting, as well as ultimate decision and public input at the city council meeting. So there's an opportunity to address each of those specific proposals on a case-by-case basis. So we think that's a wise approach in this case, of course. The other pieces, we would, as Scott mentioned, prohibit on-site consumption, which is also addressed in the zoning ordinance, as well as drive-throughs, those types of issues. We'd also take a look at the separation from other types of uses. I think that given our experience with the medical side of things, we would take a look and evaluate each of those separations and whether or not we continue with those, do we amend them, what happens with those. We'll come back with a recommendation from the zoning board onto council on those items as well. And then lastly, obviously, we've got to work within the framework that the state has set forth for us with respect to zoning. So obviously, we'll have to work through that. But as Scott mentioned, it sounds like we have some latitude to do some regulation here through zoning.
Very good. Thanks, Ty. Chief?
The biggest thing for law enforcement is one of the parts of the law does give us a percentage of money that does come back to the city or the community for us to do training. One of the things we want to do with that is make sure we have officers that are trained in specific areas. It's kind of like driving under the influence. These officers are trained in different types of like A-RIDE. A-RIDE is considered advanced roadside impaired driving enforcement. They're going to be out there to be able to do specific tests for telling whether a driver is impaired. Same thing for drug recognition officers. that is a challenge for us to get officers to that type of training, and it is a specific training. It's kind of like DUI training. So there is a portion of law that brings us back to the money, and that will be used to actually train officers. And we'll also learn about the laws. There is confusion in some parts of it. So for us to be able to send officers to training or different aspects of that is going to be where the biggest thing for us comes into play. One of the things we understand is whether there are dispensaries within the city or not, it's still going to be in the city. We're still going to have to deal with the situation, whether they go to another community or not to purchase it. We will still be feeling the effects of the legalization of marijuana. So one of the things is we have to make sure that we are prepared to be able to deal with those situations. So for us, it's more about training and getting the officers ready to deal with the situation.
Very good. Thanks, Chief. I'd like to open it up to the council first, if you guys have any questions for any of the three that you'd like to pose.
I have one. Mr. Brunton, you mentioned that there's 6 different types of licenses. I believe what I had read previously that they're going to release 70-some licenses, and the prescription licenses got the first choice at those 70-some. So is there a number allotted to each one of these different types?
Yeah, that's correct. Each license has a specific number set forth in the Act. The dispensaries there's like you said at the beginning, the dispensaries, there's going to be 75 dispensary licenses issued, I think, on and before May 1st, 2020. And there's kind of a staggered timeline all the way up to the end of 2023, at which point in time there'll be up to 500 allowed statewide. So that's on the dispensary side. Most of the other licenses aren't anywhere near that. They're more around the 100 range. So, but anyway, yes, each one of those businesses, there's a specific number of licenses that are available throughout the state.
Okay, so there's 75 dispensary by alone, not including these other types that we have to deal with the other types.
That's correct. Yeah, there'll be 75 dispensary licenses, and there'll be up to 100. I think it's I don't know the exact number for each one of the other types of licenses, but they go up to over time up to like in the 100, 140 range for the different types. I don't think there's that many cultivation centers, but there's just it's kind of a staggered schedule for most of them. But the dispensary licenses, which is what most people are going to be thinking about, like you said, the initial dispensary licenses are being offered to folks who already have a medical dispensary license, and I think there's 60 of those in the state. So that basically is 15 outside of them that would be available statewide. But it then goes up to 110. I forget, maybe at the end of 2020. I forget the exact time frame. But anyway, we certainly get that information.
The exclusion of 1,500 feet between dispensaries, does that include the medical as well, or just the recreational dispensers?
Well, the way they define dispensaries includes all cannabis dispensaries, so that will include medical dispensaries. But a medical dispensary, as I understand it, will be able to get a kind of a co-location license, so they can operate both. They can operate in one location and sell both recreational and medicinal cannabis at the same, but not out of the same environment. They have to be separated, but they could be the same location, so they could be side by side. So, for instance, here in East Peoria at New Med, they could split their site in half, and half of it for medicinal cannabis, the other half for recreational. So that would, as I understand the law, that's what it allows. But if they get away from their co-location site, it appears that they would have to be 1,500 feet. So if New Med wanted to open a separate site from their current medicinal cannabis site, then they would have to be 1,500 feet from their own current site. That's the way it appears that it reads.
One of the last question I have is for the police chief. Are the field tests ready at this point in time? Do you know for this?
Matter of fact, I was just speaking with a subject matter expert who's actually in the room here. One of the things is there are testing kits available out there. Part of the thing is they're not actually been set up to be approved by the state, unless I'm mistaken. Right now, there has to be some actual regulations on how they can be used on the roadways. So there are kits out there available. But this just has to be, one of those actually has to be approved and how they're going to be used in those type of situations. Your biggest thing is going to be your officers who are trained in drug recognition and/or the advanced roadside impaired things by actually looking at the person who's out there, their mannerisms, their judgments, stuff like that. So the officer trained to pick up the signs is going to be one of your bigger portions of why we have those officers trained.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Decker?
Yeah, Chief, those field kits that you're talking about, when they are approved, is it a test similar to alcohol where it's .08 would be over the legal limit? Is it something like that?
And, well, that's one of the things I'm going to have to look into to see exactly what is, how it is. And I said, I was just speaking, and one of the things is going to be is what kits are available, how they're used, what they're done, and then the training of those officers. The biggest things are going to be just like a breathalyzer can be considered a probable cause test. But until you actually go through a machine, you can use a portable breathalyzer, but that's only going to give you an initial probable cause. Until you actually go through a certified breathalyzer to tell you what their blood alcohol limit is, that's where it's going to come into play. So once again, I think there's going to be a lot of learning curve for officers to learn how to use these tests and do that.
And every officer will need to be trained completely. Have you given any thought yet to how much that is looking like for each officer?
One of the things we'd have to probably look at is officers would probably, one of the biggest things is training for understanding is when you're trained in this, it is a specific type of training. You have to do it on a lot of continuous basis. It may be something similar to we need to make sure all officers are trained to a certain level to make sure they're able to recognize certain different things, just like in DUI. And then maybe sometimes we may have officers that are trained specifically how to handle the DUI. So once again, training all the officers is definitely an option, but the idea is they're going to have to use it on a continuous basis to keep their level of expertise at it. That could become a challenge, is if we train people, they don't have the ability to have those observations, and then basically they're losing their expertise in it. So that's one of the things we have to look at. Will we have a certain number of officers that are actually trained to a full expertise level and everybody else is trained at a real awareness level, or do we take everybody to that further level? So those are definitely things we have to look at of how do we go forward with this. But once again, is if you don't use it, you lose it. So those are challenges that we're going to have for how we do the officers.
Okay. Scott, I'm sorry, I became a little confused when you were talking a few minutes ago. It sounds like 75 license, I understand that, and there are 60 medical license. So at first, you believe that there are only going to be 15 recreational throughout the state?
I'm sorry if I confused you. Initially, the law allows for 75 dispensary licenses to be issued before May 1st of 2020. Anybody who currently has a medical license to sell medical marijuana will have first shot at getting one of those 75 licenses. So presuming, which I probably am presuming, but that a lot of those businesses went into business for this very reason, to have the opportunity to sell recreational marijuana at some point. I guess I was presuming all 60 of them would apply for recreational dispensary licenses, which would then leave 15 statewide that would be available initially for other types of dispensaries to come in or other businesses to operate.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah, I think
okay.
so.
I'm sorry about that confusion.
No, that's okay. My only other question is, and I don't know if it has anything to do with it or not, but I know that it's made from the same plant minus the THC, are the oils. I know that there are some oils that have trace amounts of THC, not enough to impair anyone, I believe. But to your knowledge, are those covered under this act as well, or is that something completely separate?
Unless they're injected with the THC compound, I don't think they're covered by this act.
Okay.
So CBD oils in general, as they're currently permitted, will continue to be permitted as I understand it. But a lot of this is going to have to go through regulations issued by the state, so we'll have better clarification on that. But at this point, it doesn't appear that that I've ever read or seen anything within the act that's, that specifically applies or prohibits CBD oils. I think that regulation, that this act was not designed to regulate that specifically. So, I mean, it does get down to the chemicals involved, and if it's, so anyway, hopefully that answers your question. But I do suspect we'll see some regulations that will be issued, because there will be a lot of them that cover quite a wide array of issues that are covered by this act. And I suspect that will be one of them.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have right now, Mayor.
Commissioner Mingus?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have one question. That's for Scott. Scott, 75 initial licenses is what the state's going to offer. Do they break those licenses up by zone, district, or is it just wide open to the state?
As far as I know, it's within the state, but the medical dispensaries are already split up by a certain number for every police district. So that by itself, that means those first 60 are already basically split in that way, but I don't think the other 15 are. Megan's been helping me, Megan Yentis from the office. Do you know that answer?
I do know that the act does define what's known as like the BLS region, so it's possible. We would have to look back and see whether or not it is, so.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of provisions regarding where the dispensaries are, and they actually do enumerate certain communities that are going to be given a certain number of dispensaries. East Peoria is not one of them, but there are other, like Peoria is, specifically spelled out that they get so many dispensary licenses. When those go into effect, I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, that's kind of the fine details of the act that we don't have our hands fully around at this point.
Yeah. Commissioner Sutherland, any questions? As he's in deep thought.
Yeah. I guess my first and only question that I can think of right now, what you guys project our 10% is going to be? Because the way I read this is 8% will be given to train and 2% will be for drug treatment funds. So all 10% will have to go to detection, combating, and treatment. And if we don't do this, what are we expecting our 10% to be? So in other words, are we expecting $100,000 a year to train our policemen and have the community drug treatment fund for public education? And if we do this, then there's where the money's coming from. If we don't do this, then we need to have another $100,000 to do what the state wants us to do for the drug treatment and detection and enforcement?
The state distributive share of the taxes that are going to be collected under the Cannabis Act are going to go to all communities. So that's going to be, I presume, on some per capita basis. I haven't seen any projections on what that would mean. So that 8% you're talking about that's statewide, if all communities are going to have access to those funds, and it'll be distributed.
Even if they're going to have access to the 8%, even if we don't sell it?
That's correct. That's our understanding of the act, yes. So if you do sell it, you're able to add up to 3% on top of anything sold within the city, which gives you then those additional funds at the beginning that you could use for law enforcement training and these other programs that are going to be so necessary. But but the 8% that you're talking about, that's not limited as far as we know, but there's still a lot to be determined, I would say, at this point on how that's all going to play out. And so we'll probably have some refinement on that as we go forward. I do expect to see some kind of trailer bill coming this fall that will go through the legislature and would likely, refine a lot of these types of issues, including possibly that one.
Well, upon that answer, then basically it says, what I've read here, what I've been reading about, is 10% will be transferred from the budget from the state to our coffers. 8% of it will be for what I said, and then 2% will be for the treatment program. My question to you is, I believe if I read this right, the state is saying that they may give up to 8% or 10%. once again, the state is using the word may, and then it says we shall at our end. I cannot think of the last time that the state in any way ever has kept its fiscal promise on the word may, ever.
Well, that's a good question and a good
Yeah.
point, but what I would say is you're going to, the shall on your end is the restricted funds. So you're going to have to use them specifically for those purposes, not just the city here, but every municipality and every county that gets these types of funds, there'll be restricted funds to be used just for those purposes, that 8% that you're talking about. And I don't fully understand the 2%. I understand what you're saying, but I don't know exactly how that's
Well,
going to be
let
administered.
me read what I have here on the 2% out of the 10% that they give us. It says, 2% will be transferred to the Drug Treatment Fund to fund public education campaign and support data collection and analysis to the public health impacts of legalizing the recreational use of cannabis. That's 2% of the 10%.
Right.
So what we're doing here is if we do this in this city, our only pickup money-wise for the police department is possibly 3%.
Well, it's 8% you're going to get from the state.
But we're going to get no matter what.
Yeah, you're going to get no matter what. And right, the only thing you can add to that, outside of just pulling from your other general funds that are available, is the ability to tax any dispensaries within the city at that 3% level that you just talked about. So that 3% does give, if you do allow a dispensary, recreational dispensary in the city, you will have the availability. Those funds are unrestricted funds. So that 3% you're getting under that additional 3% tax you're allowed to, sales tax you're allowed to impose, is unrestricted. So that's going to be up to you folks where that goes. That can go specifically to assist the police, at the initial stages here. It can go for other type of programs that you think would be appropriate, or it could go virtually, anywhere that you can use unrestricted general funds. That'll be a decision for you guys, for the council to make. So that's the way I understand it at this point in time. That 2% that you talk about, I'm not for sure on this, but it's my understanding that's going to be more kept at the state level. It's not going to come down to the municipalities that have to set up those types of programs you talked about for education. I think that's going to be more at the state level.
That was my understanding as well. The 8% goes back to the local municipalities for
Right.
that specific purpose.
Correct.
So,
That's all I have.
okay, well, in light of the fact that we got about 28 minutes, I'd like to open it up for public comment. I ask that you kind of limit it looks like there's a large audience here. I'm not sure how many people want to get up to the podium and speak, but I ask that you're a resident of East Peoria. If you're not, at least have the courtesy to allow those residents to speak first. We have a regular meeting scheduled at 6 o'clock. We have to stay on course with that. Whoever doesn't get an opportunity to speak here this evening, we have an opportunity for public comment during the regular meeting under a non-agenda item. You can certainly share your comments at that time. And obviously, if the council, this will be brought back probably next month for consideration by the council. You also have an opportunity at that time to speak. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward.
My name is Dennis Paluska, Shady Knolls Drive, East Peoria. I came into the meeting open-minded. I wanted to hear what was going to happen and so forth. I think the commission has a pretty good handle on, or at least a direction that they're going to go, and they have a pretty good idea of how to handle it. So I put the trust in you guys. I just wanted to say that initially when I came in, I thought, boy, I'm for a dispensary, because if East Peoria doesn't do it and take advantage of any income, tax base, whatever, that obviously Peoria will, and East Peoria will still have to deal with whoever comes across the river, basically. Or if East Peoria goes over and buys it in Peoria, East Peoria is still dealing with the situation. So it seems like take advantage of it if possible. Obviously, there's lots of things to iron out.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dennis.
Hi.
Mr. Sills?
I think it's pretty sad when government feels that it's their obligation to profit off the bad habits of their citizens. I don't feel that makes them any different than a drug dealer on the corner. I can't actually believe that you think some 21-year-old is not going to go down to our local marijuana shop, buy some product, and then pass it along to the underage kids. Currently, that's going on with alcohol, smoking, vaping, so it's going to happen. The next generation looks to us for leadership, and you gentlemen up there are the leaders that they're going to look up to, especially you, the ones of you that have young kids at home. You're going to have to go home and tell your kid, yes, I support recreational marijuana. Either you're for it or you're against it. The only person on this council that I've spoke to that said he's against it is Mr. Sutherland, and I commend him for that. There's only one species on this planet that can stand on both sides of the fence at the same time, and that species is a politician. So you're either for it or against it. Think of the next generation.
Thank you, Mr. Sales. Anyone else wish to address the council? Mr. Holting, how are you, sir?
Well, I could be better because I'm talking about a terrible subject.
Yep.
I'm 72 years old. I graduated high school in 1965, and our generation started the moral decay of this country, and I'm not very proud of that. I served in the military. I never did any drugs, marijuana. Somehow I got by that. I never was around anybody that did it. Alcohol was bad enough. That was my trip. And I don't think the Illinois Sheriff's Association was against it. What about the police chiefs?
I'd have to find out what the Illinois police chiefs are. I don't have their understanding, but once again, I have to look at that.
We need to do that. The last gentleman was right on. It's a heck of a way to get revenue. If we're going to generate revenue, let's create jobs in East Peoria. Let's don't do it the low road. Let's do it the high road. What if, Mr. Decker, you call your troops out at 2 o'clock in the morning to push snow, and half of them been doing cannabis all night? How are you going to, are they impaired?
I have not spoken with the council about this. I'm pretty sure there is a belief that there would be a zero tolerance policy. I don't know. I'd hate
And
to
that's
speak
part
for
of the law
others.
that's allowed, so I'm quite certain if the city moved forward with anything, that would be implemented, which is a zero tolerance.
Because of my neighbor in Florida is on medical marijuana. And when he got approved, the first thing that was said to him, Jerry said, don't drive if you use this. So that was eye-opening to me. And if you look at Colorado, I haven't followed this because I'm not into this stuff. But Colorado is probably making a lot of revenue all this. They're having a lot more accidents out there, and it's a mess. So let's do something that's good for everybody, that isn't gonna, that's all we need, somebody drunk, somebody high, and people are gonna abuse this. If it's legal, they're gonna abuse it. So let's take the road like Morton did in El Paso, and I'm sure there'll be other communities, and let's say that East Peoria is the place to be. We're looking at our kids, my grandkids, and everything else. It's ridiculous to even be thinking about this in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Mr. Norberts?
Listening tonight, what I'm hearing is that the city will share in the revenue, or 8%, whether we allow it or not. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
There's a
Yes, that's
8%
correct.
share of the state revenue that goes back to local municipalities for exactly what the chief mentioned, specific education and training for law enforcement.
Okay, so even if we say no to the dispensaries here, we're still going to get that revenue to train our officers?
I want to see clarification. I know that's what Mr. Brunton said. I kind of got a different take on it, and in fairness to this council, we'll get clarification and bring that back and share it with the public.
I believe the same thing as the mayor. He told me about that, and I checked into it as well. I'm certainly not an attorney, and Scott's a much more intelligent person than I am, but I would like clarification on that, because I was under the same opinion. Or
I'm saying this law is very comprehensive, so as Scott said, I'm sure there's going to be some trailer legislation to come back and refine a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of gray areas, what I deem to be gray areas, and that's one of them.
So the other thing I was hearing is basically you could also allow it to be dispensed here, yet create the zone so that nothing could ever form as well, based upon distances to or from areas.
What do you mean form?
Oh,
So if you're
distance
within
like
a
1,500
school
feet.
Oh,
zone,
absolutely.
or you're within a residential zone, or if you look at our city, how it's laid out, you could really allow it to be dispensed, but unable to provide the licenses based upon your zoning.
Zoning would be a big component, and that's why Ty spoke. I mean, we currently regulate the medical dispensary, and this would be no different
So,
if we did it.
has anybody done a cost versus revenue analysis on this to see what it is going to cost the city to put this in place, training, and all the things that go along with it, and the revenue that we're going to receive?
That's very difficult. I asked him a few minutes ago if, as far as like all of our officers being trained, trying to figure out what that is, and I don't think it's 100% known yet.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as what the costs are, I will say those costs are going to be there whether we vote yes or no, because whether people buy it in East Peoria, Creve Coeur, Peoria, they will still live in East Peoria, some will. As far as our share of sales tax, I've asked multiple people, and unless the mayor has a better understanding of that, I have no idea. I wish I
Listen,
knew.
The state threw out a number, and I think we can all imagine that number was probably high. No pun intended, but I mean, I literally think, just like anything else, when they pass legislation, they go on the high side, thinking it's going to generate X amount of revenue. Nobody knows for sure. I mean, this is going to be new to everybody throughout the state.
So I was wondering what the state was going to supply as far as income to the city, what that number may be. Is it 100,000, or, I mean, we were throwing numbers out earlier.
They have not shared.
Are we going to have to cover the costs, the excess costs? And it sounds like no matter what, we're going to have to take money out of our coffers to cover costs associated with this as well.
Oh, we're going to have to deal with it, period.
So-
No matter what this council decides, the city's going to have to deal with it. It's coming, so. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Anyone else? Bob, good to see you.
Yeah. Sounds to me kind of like the state has put this in sort of kind of like the National Electric Code. When it says shall, you're going to do it whether you like it or not, whether it costs you or not. It says may or should, whichever, then it's at your discretion. But it don't sound to me like the taxpayers in East Peoria is going to have anything to say about it. I mean, you guys can vote, yeah, we will, no, we won't. And if the cost runs over the 8% to train the police department, you know it's only 5 minutes down the road. Now then we got to train the fire department so they can do it. So this seems to me like you said, either way, I'm not pointing fingers at you guys necessarily, but this is a damn bottomless pit, okay? And last time I talked to anybody, we were pretty far down in that pit anyway. So we're going to pile this on top. Either way, we're going to get it, that's all I'm saying. I guess I'm just voicing my frustrations about them passing the legislation, and guess who has to put all the skin in the game? The citizens of the state of Illinois. Hey, thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Street, how are you, sir?
Good. I say embrace the opportunity. You've got, shops that are closed up in the area. If you should get a license, open one up. I mean, really, it could provide income for the city. Your training's getting paid for one way or another, so why not have some extra money? And long gone are the days of people watching Reefer Madness and being scared of this. I think it's a lot safer than alcohol, and we've got plenty of that in the area. So I trust you'll make the best decision.
Thank you for your comments.
May I reply to that one a little bit?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm 62. I've got a few dozen friends that aren't here today because of drugs. One thing, cannabis has never killed anybody that I know of using cannabis. But I've never known anybody to ever die of drug overdose that didn't start out with cannabis.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
Yes, sir.
Yes. My first question is, Officer, New Med's been open for like 2 years now, has it?
Close to 4.
Has New Med close to 4? Have you had any increase in violence or disturbances, DUIs increase?
Not aware of any incidents that have occurred because of the business being open, no.
Okay. So it's been pretty peaceful for them to be open?
Correct.
Okay. They close at 6 o'clock at night, isn't it?
That I'm not sure of, but
It is, I believe, 6. So you got a business that closes at 6, has not had no violence, no disturbances for 4 years. Mr. Southern, I would like to comment on your comment. I've started smoking cannabis when I was 18 years old. Smoked it for 40 years. You've worked with me. How did I perform? People that smoke cannabis don't always go to harder drugs. People that smoke cigarettes, they're known to try more drugs and alcohol than a cannabis user. I'm a proven fact of it. I don't smoke cigarettes, don't drink alcohol, don't do hard drugs. So this, just like the gentleman said, the reefer madness, it needs to stop. We're peaceful. I run a business with my brothers, did a lot of work for East Peoria for 27 years, and I'm very successful at it. And I've hid from you for 40 years. I'm tired of hiding. I would like for it to be recreational so that we don't have this gentleman wanting to haul me to jail for something I'm going to do at my home. Raised 6 kids, 5 girls, a boy, adopted 4 of them, 4 college graduates. That was my home with cannabis involved. Alcohol, I got a dead nephew, hung himself because of alcohol. So if you want to weigh the odds of cannabis and alcohol, come talk to me. I am an experienced person on all of it. Some people are here on assumptions. I'm here with experience. So to ease the things, just like Colorado, the wrecks have increased. That's because they stuffed 3 million people in a town with it's for 500,000. Bunch of crashes, but not death crashes. So to rely on those kind of assumptions for you to make your decision, I think you need to do a little more research and then think about it. And I am free at any time to talk to any of you gentlemen to give you some input, because you are talking to somebody that has experience. And I've worked my life off. I got 11 months till I retire. I missed 4 days in 11 years working on my job. 4 days.
Are you willing to say your name, sir?
Yes, Daniel Atherton.
Okay.
So.
We appreciate your comments, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Hold on, we've got a couple takers. Yes, sir.
I'm here to say that we've got plenty of problems without adding to it. I've never smoked, never drank, don't do drugs, none of that stuff. But I've seen a lot of people that's done it. It's not good. If a lot of people don't have the common sense to adjust themselves, if they're drinking or smoking or doing marijuana, you just got to have plain common sense. I think that police chief over there would know that you can't regulate people like that. Some people can't regulate themselves. And if they have another outlet, they're just going to be that farther down. I just don't see why anybody, you got your kids, you want them growing up smoking marijuana. It's a gateway drug. Totally against it. Absolutely. And I'm 84 years old. And I'm in better shape than most of you.
I was going to say, man, you look great for
That's
84.
right. Don't smoke, don't drink. Don't drugs.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Appreciate your comments, sir. Thank
follow
you.
my line.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Sir.
Jeff Hickerson, Eckley, East Peoria. But the kids are going to get it either way, it seems to me. So if we embrace it and regulate it and do it right, I know most of you guys, zoning tie, and I still buy my nuts and bolts at Mike. We differ on this. But I think the kids, they're going to get it either way. And I think if we do it right, we can regulate it a little bit and know what they're getting. Because I read in the paper where, they got oregano and they got rat poison in that bag, and I think I read where 3 guys just died with rat poison in it. If we do it right, don't they stamp it and you get it from a cultivator, and you know what you're getting, you know what you're buying. I haven't seen the stuff since the 70s, from the high school days on the Hill. But I think if we do it right, the young kids are going to go out there and get it no matter what. If I was a young man, I'd get into the cultivation. You should see my tomato plants. They're awesome. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, any other comments from the council?
Nothing more.
Hearing none. Very good. I would seek a motion to adjourn this working session. Seek a motion? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Here.
Hill?
Here.
Mingus?
Here.
Sutherland?
Here.
Mayor Call?
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings our city has, some obvious, some not so obvious. Guide us to the positive and help us not dwell on the negative. We are thankful for the many who contribute to making our city better every day. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the minutes of the regular meeting held on August 6, 2019, the minutes of the closed meeting executive session held on August 6, 2019, and the minutes of the special meeting held on August 15, 2019 be approved as printed.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
With all present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you. Nothing under communications. Any public comment on an agenda item? Anyone wishing to address the council on an agenda item, please step forward. Mr. Holting?
Tom Holting, 513 Indian Circle. On these toters, recycle, that's for recycling?
Both.
It's extra both.
It's
Okay.
both solid waste.
Are they going to have smaller toters for recycling?
Yes, both. We have
I
48
think-
gallon listed in this purchase for both recycle and solid waste, correct, Dennis? Yes, sir.
Is the 96 gallon what was the initial issue? They're going to go to smaller toters for recycling? Is that correct?
No.
No, the issue
No,
was
we're
the-
just looking to offer two sizes, 48 gallon and a 96 gallon.
Okay, but will the 48 gallon be for recycling?
They will both be for.
We'll have them both.
Okay, because in my mind, the 96 gallon for some folks is too big.
Right, and that's why we thought we'd put a smaller option on here. But the recycling will have a blue lid, and the others are black, I
Okay.
believe. Or if you
Okay.
have, like I do, the.
Okay, thanks for going to the smaller container, because I think a lot of people have problems with those, especially if you've got a steep driveway or something like that. It can, if they're full, they'll take you for a ride, believe me.
Yes, sir.
Fire department, Ford crew cab, diesel. Why are we buying a diesel crew cab pickup? Why are we buying one with a diesel engine? Higher cost.
Correct, in longevity over a period of time.
I had a Ford diesel, and believe me, they're not good for longevity.
I disagree.
If you're gonna buy a diesel, buy a Dodge Cummins,
I
like you've
disagree.
got in the fire department with your ambulance.
We've had very good luck.
So why do we need a diesel longevity?
Correct.
Okay, why do you need a high torque engine? Who's gonna drive this?
These will be firefighters that will be polling on occasion.
On occasion, why don't you, Ford now offers like a 6.2 V8, high torque V8. Why don't you buy something that has lower operating and maintenance costs?
Very honestly, from my perspective, I think the diesel is a better option. I've had both. I'm experienced at both. My mechanic would disagree with you. Honestly, from my mechanic's perspective, I agree with him.
I worked in product support at Caterpillar for 35 years.
Excellent.
And I know about power stroke engines, and you're buying the wrong diesel, believe me. That's based on personal experience, too.
Understood. And my experience is
Okay.
actually with General Motors.
Okay, but I think we're going the wrong way.
I appreciate your opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holton. Anyone else wish to address the council on an agenda item, please come forward. Seeing no one, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any objections from the council? Hearing none. Very good. Commissioner Hill?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a consent agenda consisting of items number 1 through 5. Item number 1, adoption of resolution number 1920-051, resolution to approve payment of the scheduled bills listed on Schedule 7 in the amount of $1,857,090.23. Item number 2, adoption of resolution number 1920-039 on its second reading, resolution accepting the lowest responsible bid for Wyman Roofing and Sheet Metal, Inc. for Firehouse Number 3 Engine Bay Roof Replacement Project in the amount of $36,556. Item number 3, adoption of resolution number 1920-040 on its second reading, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a joint funding agreement between the City of East Peoria and the Peoria-Pekin Urbanized Area Transportation Study, PUATS, for the fiscal year 2020. Item number 4, adoption of resolution number 1920-044 on its second reading, resolution approving consulting services agreement for monitoring and oversight of the city's sanitary sewer system upgrade project. Item number 5, adoption of resolution 1920-045 on its second reading, resolution approving 2019 to 2020 intergovernmental agreement for mutual aid with the Northern Tazewell Fire Protection District, as listed on the agenda for this meeting to be considered by omnibus vote.
I have a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mangus. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that items numbered 1 through 5 listed on the consent agenda be hereby approved and adopted. The items numbered 2 through 5 having been read once by their title and having laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection be adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 items tonight. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that resolution number 1920-042 hereto attached, a resolution relating to participation by the mayor in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund be hereby approved. Mr. Mayor, I move that this resolution 1920-042, having been read once by title and having laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection, be adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will be abstaining from this. Obviously, it involves my position. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Abstain.
I have 4 ayes and 1 abstention, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that ordinance number 4452 hereto attached, an ordinance authorizing a special use for property located at 412 Cass Street in the city of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for inspection, public inspection.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker.
This particular property on 412 Cass is down across from Caterpillar's building LL. It has been a truck. It's been a truck lot for over 20 years. And this is for a company called Contractor Disposal, LLC. And they will be using that to store roll-off dumpsters. And there's some regulations. This went through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And some of the constraints or limits that they put on this particular, I was going to say special use, the ordinance here, that no cleaning of the dumpsters, no filled dumpsters, no signage, and the fence, they're going to make some improvements to the property. The entrance will be paved. Coming off the street, there'll be fencing and privacy slats. So again, this is for Contractor Disposal LLC to use this lot that's been, again, somewhat of a truck depot for going on 20 years. Ty, did anything to add?
You covered it well. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Hearing none. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
That is it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Commissioner Decker.
I have two items, Mayor. First of all, resolution number 1920-050 be it resolved by the council, City of East Peoria, Illinois. The resolution number 1920-050 hereto attached. A resolution approving the purchase of 450 96-gallon and 248-gallon recycle solid waste wheeled carts for public works from Waste Quip in the amount of $35,250.80 be approved. Mr. Mayor, I move you that this resolution number 1920-050 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title, be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mingus.
Thank you, Commissioner Mingus. This item came up last council meeting, and there were no smaller toters in there. This is the first time the city has ever purchased smaller toters. It's something that I've never been opposed to, just we have not made it a practice in East Peoria. There have been people that have come to council over the years and requested to use a smaller toter. We have never told people they could not use them. However, we've kind of said at your own risk. My personal only fear is that the arm from the garbage truck, when it reaches out and grabs the larger toter, I'm fearful that this smaller toter may be more at risk of it slipping from the, I guess, the grasp. Having said that, I rode recently with the garbage truck, and none of the smaller ones that were out did slip that day. It is still a possibility. But after the agenda did not pass last council meeting, the mayor reached out to Dennis and said that he may consider supporting if we had smaller toters available as well. Certainly, for me, that's fine. I certainly don't mind at all. A couple little things as far as it won't take up any more space. In fact, a little bit less space. We'll just have them separated. There are a couple other things I need to mention with it. First of all, the prices were something that we began looking at as well. It has never been the intention of the city to lose money on the toters. It's also never been the intention of the city to make money on the toters, and that's still our intention. In looking at these over the last couple weeks, we took the salary of the people that would normally deliver these and work on them, and we added in, to the best of our ability, and I think there were 3 or 4 people, 5 people that were working on it, trying to get as close as we could. And I think the number that we have is accurate. What we landed on was the 96-gallon are going to be 75. We believe that's as close to break even as we could get. And the smaller ones are, is it 65? 65. Yep. That's just something that we believe is a break-even point. I think that's fair. There still also needs to be the discussion in the future about whether we should supply toters or not. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had a couple people say to me that they believe we should because we're in the garbage business and we require toters, so they think that we should have them available for purchase. I've had one person reach out to me and disagree with that. I think the right thing to do, though, is have a public conversation. Allow anybody that would like to speak about it to come speak for or against and take that into consideration. I think tonight, hopefully, this passes. We can move forward and then have that conversation with the public in the future.
Very good. Any other comments from the council?
Yeah, I've got a comment. I wanted to correct the record that was reported after the meeting. First of all, as Commissioner Decker just talked about, it was reported that we had ended the toter business, but no, what we ended was, or what we voted on, the decision was not to spend $34,000 last meeting to buy a truckload of the 96 galloners. Another thing that was reported was that, again, Commissioner Mingus and Commissioner Decker were, as it was reported here, that they did not want to abruptly end the sale of inexpensive toters. And so what was not reflected in there was that I myself said I would not support the truckload, as Mr. Commissioner Decker had reported here, that I was for buying a smaller lot so that our citizens could have an opportunity to get toters depending on our decision on whether to stay in the business. Because again, whether we should be in the toter business, again, is a question that I think we need to revisit based on resources and such. So I wanted to go with that. I like the correction of the price, because again, we were losing money or not at least breaking even on the previous price. What I hated to see, even though I'm not against the small toters, again in this, until we decide whether we should be in the business of toters, warranting the toters, I hated to see that now we've got the small toters, which I'm not against, on this resolution, and now we either accept, I said I would accept a smaller lot, here's a smaller lot of the 90 or larger size, but now we've got the smaller ones that we now are going to increase our liability to our city to warranty these for X number of years. I'm not sure, Commissioner Decker, on how long we're warranting these next ones.
We go with the manufacturer's warranties. It's not the city, but I believe on the smaller is also 10 years. Isn't that right, Dennis?
So, again, I wanted to correct that record, and again, I'm for the adjusted size for the large ones. I did not want to introduce the small ones until we decided whether to stay in the business, because we just have, again, an extended liability out there for the next 10 years to manage and maintain those 200 that we're going to put on the street. So with that being said, that's all I have.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'll just say I voted for this last meeting, and obviously I'll be voting for it again. I appreciate Commissioner Decker and Mayor Call working together along with Dennis to come up with a solution that hopefully will pass. I also agree with Commissioner Decker that a public forum, something where where the citizens can tell us how they feel about the sale of toters is, I agree with, an appropriate next step, and then the council can make a decision from there as far as what that looks like.
Very good.
Sure, I got something to say. Let me say this. Since I've been here, one of the first things I was told was, listen, we don't know what the garbage prices are going to be. We may be getting out of the garbage picking up business in East Peoria because we're the last community that picks it up. So as far as I'm concerned, until we decide whether we're going to stay in the business or not, keeping these totes going indefinitely just goes totally against my grain. I don't mind the price going up, which I think I still don't think it's enough. I mean, get your calculator out, figure it out yourself. What I have a problem with is that we don't have an end to this. We are not a store. We are not Walmart. We are not Lowe's. And this, if we look at these warranties, then that means we have to keep bringing these cans in indefinitely for 10 years. And then if somebody buys them because we have them next year, then we're extended out another 10 years, and et cetera, et cetera. There's got to be an end to this somewhere if we're going to get out. If we're not going to get out, then I'm going to vote no on this. If we are going to get out, and this is my last shipment, because $35,000 or $36,000 is going to fix a lot of potholes in East Peoria. And so that's where I stand. So if the rest of the commissioners are saying, hey, listen, I'm willing to work my way out of this deal, I'm in. But if you're not, I'm out.
I did want to clarify one thing, just because of Mike's, when I was talking about the business, I was talking about the toter supply business, not the garbage pickup business. So there was a reference there from Commissioner Sutherland that I wanted to not distance myself from. I was, again, talking about the toters, not the trash pickup. But I don't think, Mike, that right now, what I'm hearing, and I'm open to the public forum to discuss that further, I don't think tonight the council's ready to say we're in or we're out. tonight. So you're either going to have to accept the batch here.
Well, it's 4 against 1, so I guess I'm going to have to accept whatever comes down the pike.
No.
But
Everyone's
I
got their
too
own
do
voice, so.
do want to have that discussion, to make a logical conclusion whether we should be, and I agree with you, whether we should be ongoing picking, maintaining trash toters.
You know, East Peoria is unique in that we do provide our own garbage, solid waste business, and I was supportive when we made the purchase of the trucks with this new technology, knowing that we were going to move to a mandatory toter system. I stand by that decision. Was it the right decision? You know, we've replaced some arms. I don't know if the technology's any better, but it's here. So as long as we're in the solid waste business, and I've said this all along, 2 things that I would like to consider: offering 2 sizes for the reasons Mr. Holting did. I heard that a lot from a lot of senior citizens, including my neighbors, that opted out of the recycling business because we didn't offer the smaller toter. So I was wanting to see 2 sizes made available as long as we're in the business, meaning the solid waste business, because I do believe we have an obligation if we are going to provide that service, no different than PDC or Waste Management, where they provide it, and they provide the cans or the toters to whatever municipality they cover or they contract with. So, and secondly, to better cover our costs, because at the end of the day, it's your money, it's taxpayer money. So I have a comfort level. I appreciate Dennis working, Commissioner Decker working with me as well to try to get as close as we can to the break-even cost, and I will be supporting this tonight. Now, moving forward, we'd like public input as to what the public would like to see. But just personally, I feel if we're going to provide the service, we need to provide all the equipment that comes with it. So, any other discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
No.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
4 ayes and 1 no, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
All right, next, Mayor, resolution number 1920-048. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that resolution number 1920-048, hereto attached, a resolution approving engineering services contract with Midwest Engineering Associates for Altorfer Lane improvements be approved. Mr. Mayor, I move you that this resolution number 1920-048 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title, be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mingus.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to allow Ty and Dennis to talk about this. It is a road that definitely needs some improvement for future development. I'll let them go forward.
So this is for Altorfer Lane. For those of you that aren't familiar, it's the road that is north of Camp Street, opposite Spinder. It is an area that serves a pretty significant business there in Intercon. There's a couple of other businesses that are behind it, as well as 2 hotels that are served by this property. There's some adjacent developable property here, and the goal is to get this road up to a much more serviceable standard. Right now, it is a path. I mean, it was put in at a time when it was kind of a quick improvement, is from what I understand of the improvement there. So the first step in this is to engage an engineering firm. In this case, it's our partners with Midwest Engineering Associates. We've utilized them for a lot of different projects in the city. And it's really to focus on getting that curb and gutter design, the roadway improvement, as well as there's a landscaping buffering component here along the Intercon frontage. And then certainly, trying to keep a goal in mind of keeping cost containment. This could be a very large project, but it's something that is much needed, and I think something that these folks will do a good job in helping us address. The other piece of this also is establishing easements for, I mentioned the landscaping piece. We're going to help Intercon kind of define some entry points. We met with them last week. They really have a terrific business, and it's really grown over time, and have to be mindful of some of the traffic movements they have coming out of there. They have a very significant semi that comes out of there quite often that is difficult to maneuver, and so we'll have to make sure that the roadway can accommodate that access.
The only other addition I'll make to that was storm sewer, which Ty forgot about, is included as part of that engineering agreement, which will be dealing with getting the water off the curbed roads and into a storm sewer that'll ultimately end up into Farm Creek. So it'll help alleviate any water issues that are in that area.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Any other discussion?
Sure. I want to explain my vote right now, because Midwest Engineering is a very reputable company, and this whole project was started before my coming onto this council. Midwest Engineering was brought in after I came onto this council for this part of the job. I have a problem with an engineering firm representing the hotel that is being built next to the street that's got to be repaired for the hotel, amongst other things, that's got to be repaired, representing the city on one hand and then representing the hotel on the other hand. I'm not by no means saying that there's anything wrong with what they've done or going to do. But in the future, I would have to ask and kind of demand, at least on my end of water and sewer, that the engineering firm that's representing a private company does not turn around and represent us, because it does affect our sewer, it does affect our storm, how we handle things. It affects our road development, our flow, and the curb appeal of what we do compared to what they're going to do out of their pocket. So I will be voting yes on this, because Midwest Engineering is a reputable firm, but I won't be doing it again anymore under dual purposes like this.
And in fairness, and I can respect and appreciate your comments, we did ask Rob, Midwest, to get involved in this project based on the timeline and
Correct.
his experience and his knowledge. This is honestly, and Commissioner Decker's been on this council longer than I have, probably the first time I've seen council involvement in this type of decision, to be quite honest with you. It's not typical, and I think we discussed that on the job site, and I think moving forward, you'll see a lot more involvement in these type of decisions. But I respect your comments. So, any other discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
I have everyone present voting aye, Your Honor.
Very good. Thank you.
That's all I have right now, Mayor.
Commissioner Sutherland, anything, sir?
I have nothing.
Okay. Commissioner Mingus.
I have two items, Your Honor. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that resolution number 1920-041, hereto attached, a resolution approving and authorizing the purchase of a new 2019 Ford Crew Cab Diesel F-250 for the fire department from Curie Motors in the amount of $41,165 be hereby approved. Mr. Mayor, I move you that this resolution number 1920-041, having been read once by its title, having laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection, be adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. This is the resolution for the Ford pickup truck that was discussed at last council meeting. Chief Knapp is here today if anybody has questions about what that pickup truck will be doing. I know that Commissioner Hill had some concerns last council meeting regarding budget, and the the pickup truck is budgeted, but we had an unbudgeted repair on Station 3, and he has some concerns regarding spending. And I did go back and look at not only our spending, but I looked at the fire department's revenue up to this point as well, just to make sure that we are on target to hit our revenue marks and look at where we are on spending. I think it's important to note that while we did have an unforeseen circumstance with Station 3, the fire department is above revenue right now on its ambulance transports, which is a big, it's one way we pay for a lot of things out of our fire budget. Right now, we are $24,000 in the plus for the first 2 months of the fiscal year, and I don't know what this month will look like, but based on the number of calls we had today, I'm guessing that we will continue to be in the positive. While I don't know if that 24,000 times 6, that puts us way over the price of a pickup truck, but, or the price of the roof replacement. I do anticipate that we'll be over what Chief Knapp budgeted, which I appreciate how he budgets. He budgets low on the revenue side. That way, if something happens, we don't have a surprise. But right now, it looks like we're going to be above what he budgeted. So I did go back and look at that for Commissioner Hill just to see where we were.
Very good. Other
Thank you.
comments from the council?
Yeah, just to comment on Commissioner Mingus, I wasn't objecting to the truck as much as I was trying to make sure we stayed aligned with the roof repair, which ended up to be a major capital expense versus the maintenance budget that we had, and that's what we talked about last week. Commissioner Mingus had shared the revenues have changed, or right now we're more positive at the moment, so considering that and holding the right to, I guess, decline on future capital expenditures if we need to align it, I will support the truck tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Hearing none. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second item, Your Honor. Mr. Mayor, I move that the resolution number 1920-049 be adopted as presented. And I get to read one. Usually this is Commissioner Hill's job, but whereas Shannon Swearingen has been continuously employed by the city from July 26, 1995 through August 30th, 2019, most recently occupying the position of Deputy Police Chief, and whereas Shannon Swearingen has announced his intention to retire from employment effective at the end of the day on August 30th, 2019, and whereas the city is appreciative of the long and continued service provided by Shannon Swearingen, and whereas it is in the best interest of the city to execute the attached separation agreement, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, that Section 1, the above recitals are found to be true and correct. Section 2, the mayor is hereby authorized to execute the separation agreement with such changes as the mayor, in his sole discretion, may decide are in the best interest of the City of East Peoria. And I guess maybe I should read this now. I should not have read it first. Mr. Mayor, I move that the resolution number 1920-049 be adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. This is standard with our employees, our police officers when they retire. Deputy Chief Swearingen has dedicated 24 years of his time and life to the East Peoria Police Department, and on behalf of the City Council, I'd like to thank him for that. This is a separation agreement honoring hours that he has accumulated, and he will be paid for those hours as we do with all of our employees.
And I'll just point out, the hours are 1,160 hours. Those will be paid out in 3 installments, $19,736.37 on or before September 30th, 2019. Another $19,736.37 on or before January 15th, 2020. And $19,736.36 on or before January 15, 2021, which is custom for anyone that's wondering. You get paid out your vacation pay and your sick leave. He had 200 hours of vacation and 960 hours of sick leave. So this is what we typically do during separation agreements, in case anyone's wondering. Any comments or discussion? Chief, would you like to comment?
Just say that we've had the discussions with Deputy Chief Swearingen, and he's made this decision that, it's time for his to look into retirement, and we wish him the best of luck to it, whatever he goes into the next part of his life.
Very good. Comments from the council?
I'll tell you what, Mayor, I've worked around Shannon for a long time. Not only he's been a good cop, years ago, I was able to sit with him for a while and listen to his story in the military, and it's impressive, the things that he accomplished while he was in the military, and that's something that I've always held him in high regard for the service to our nation in some very difficult times.
I'd just like to commend Officer Swearingen for his service to the city.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Shannon.
Yep. Personally, I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Swearingen. I've worked closely with him over the last 4 years on different aspects in my role over the fire department in the previous 4 years, but I appreciate his 24 years of service. He's an upstanding guy, in my humble opinion, and I wish him and his wife and entire family well in his future endeavors, so appreciate that. Roll call?
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Very good. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on a non-agenda item, please come forward.
I'm hoping this is an agenda item and a non-agenda item, I guess you might say. Why are we improving Altorfer Lane?
Quite honestly, there's a development coming right behind the Coles. It's another hotel, and I don't know that we're in a position to share that. I don't want to steal their thunder on their announcement, but it's something that's been in the works for 2 or 3 years, easily 2 or 3 years, and it's finally come to fruition. So the 2 hotels that are located back there, as well as this new development, have long complained about the condition of that road, and anyone that travels down it knows there are quite a few issues there, and so the goal is to bring that up to standard.
Okay, why don't, go ahead.
It also benefits Entercon, which is the business that
Okay.
Mr. Livingston mentioned.
Why don't we improve Highview Road from Oakwood to Regal Lane? We had plans drawn up in 1995, 25 years ago. Nothing's been done. And you bounce, I'm surprised nobody's got killed on that section out there. It's still a country section. It's in front of Armstrong School, and nothing's been done about it. We
I
had
agree,
the
it's
plans
in-
drawn up, and I think the citizens should take precedent over I'm sure the traffic count on Highview Road's a lot higher than Altorfer Lane.
Okay.
So we need to worry about neighborhoods. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, go ahead, Mr. Sutherland, Commissioner Sutherland, you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, you can address it.
I think that the residential roads have been neglected, and the sewer and the water for 80 years. Absolutely. I am going to support this because of, if I'm not mistaken, and you, sir, can throw a rock at me if I'm wrong, but I was told that because of it's a hotel, we can use heads in beds, hotel motel taxes for that road, which does not come out of our general fund. It has to be spent on tourism. I can't fix your road. I can't fix your water main. I can't fix your sewer. But I can take that and fix that with it. What they, back in the past, when they would do the Festival of Lights and sell and buy too many strings of lights and give them, that's where the tourism, that hotel motel tax money was directed. It was now that, if I'm not mistaken, Festival of Lights is standing on its own feet, nearly completely, if not totally, by its own income coming in. There is now money from the hotel motel stuff to do unconventional things like road improvements. And we haven't really been able to talk a lot about this, but Mike has a dream, and that is to improve the road, anything to do with the Festival of Lights on Washington Street, everything, curbs, gutter, streets, water, storm, sewer, all the way up past Par 3, with hotel motel taxes, which in the past wasn't really kosher, but because of the interpretation and changes in law, now it can be in front of these places. So I am for this, because if we don't do it using the hotel motel taxes, then it will be coming out of our pockets from our property taxes. So I'm all for this one.
Yeah, these funds will not come out of the general fund, nor will they come out of the street maintenance fund that's already allocated for residential repair. So, anyone else wish to address the council on a non-agenda item? Mr. Basson.
I take one of those trucks. That's a good deal. Yeah, my name is Bill Bassam, or Billy, and I'm a longtime resident of Richland Bottoms. And I applied for a special use permit for a building on Monson, and I was denied. I got equipment there that I use in my business and to help my neighbors when they need stuff done. And we have all these people coming in, outsiders, down to the bottoms that are putting up businesses. And I like to improve my own property for my own use, but for some reason, the special use people have a problem with that. And we got several other people that are trying to do things, and it's been a challenge because we're looked down on because we're from the bottoms. The city has been coming around and tagging people. I got tagged, but I went through to get a building, then I got denied, and Joe told me that don't worry about it. Well, I took for granted, okay, no problem, but then I was told that you better watch Joe. Well, I had my wife call Joe up and to see, make sure everything's okay. And he said something about storage. I go, well, he said that everything's fine. So I went up there the Friday before court, and he said, no, you're going to get a ticket. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. I go, Joe, I did what you said. He said, no, you didn't. It's court ordered. You're going to show up for court, and you're going to get fined. So I went to court over a storage container. I got on a trailer. And it was his beef to beat me up on that trailer. I have to work to make a living. I work 16-hour days, 6 days a week. So I went to court, and I bought a license plate and stuck it on that shipping container on that trailer. And it broke his bubble because he couldn't give me a ticket on that. Why didn't he tell me before that I need to do something with a license plate or something? That way I wouldn't have to waste my day. But he was bent over to get that out of there. But I got a prop shop, used to be a prop shop, that's not even 300 feet away, maybe 400 feet away. And that guy's got cars galore. It's got trees growing up in it. And it's got weeds growing up that are 20 feet high. And all Joe could say is, they got a special use permit, he can do whatever he wants. I looked in the codes today. The city has the right to revoke his special use. How come Joe ain't on to that guy? And besides on me and other people. Then I got a woodworking shop that's been built that's 6 inches from the property line. I'm going to be 10 to 15 feet from the property line with my shed, but I can't build it. Why? Because they said I'm residential. But if I'm residential, I should be able to put up a garage. My house is humongous, my lot's big, and I don't like mowing grass. Then I got another garage down there that's got a bunch of cars that's supposed to be a tow business, and those cars been there forever. How come they're not towed out of there? How come his special use ain't evicted? Because he's got cars sitting without tags on it. Because I had to take an old truck to our farm to get it off my lot. It ran, it drove, but I had a special use I was going to use it for, but Joe said no, because it is not legal because it didn't have a driver's plate on it. This is frustrating. We're trying to do something down in the bottoms. I've been there for 60 years, a long time. I grew up down there. I was a paper boy down there. I was a Boy Scout down there. I went to grade school down there. And this is frustrating. I want to better the bottoms, but all we get is negativity from the city. We need help. We need somebody to look into this and quit throwing tickets at everybody and try to help us out. I know some people got problems, but we need to work as a team to solve these problems so we can get along better. Because everything's happening is create animosity amongst everybody, and we don't need that. There's too much of it in the world now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bassam.
With that, we'll take that, Mr. Bassam, and look into some of those, allegations. I was at the Zoning Board of Appeals, I believe, on your building, and my memory may be wrong, but I believe you were, our city ordinances for residential is 1,200 square feet, and I believe the building was going to be larger than that. Ty, do you?
The max size allowed is 1,250, and the proposed building was around double that amount.
Okay. So the building, in the residential lot, we weren't rejecting you based on ordinances, maximizing, you were twice the size of wanting a building twice the size of the ordinance.
The code says I can do it. There's a code in there, I looked it up.
Okay. We can look at those details. I was at the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I do not have those details in front of me.
Well, I think that's something we'll reach out to Mr. Bassam and carry on this conversation. I think it's worthy of looking into, but appreciate your comments. Anyone else wishing to step forward? Oh, got a few takers. Go ahead, Bob. You're up, sir.
I hate to be up here griping all the time, but I don't. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Now, on this splash pad you guys approved at one of these last meetings, they didn't work at Eastside. They didn't work at Riverplex. And you haven't got the grant, so it ain't completely a done deal, the way I understand. But what I'd like to know is just how much is this going to cost the taxpayers of East Peoria? Because when you had it at Eastside, nobody drained the pumps the first year. The pipes went, and that cost a ton of money. And how much is it going to cost the taxpayers every year to winterize that thing, whether it's full of pumps, pump it full of antifreeze, or whatever you got to do, so in the spring we don't get another one of these let's buy a new pump thing. Now that's one thing that's kind of under my hide, okay? And I got a whole bunch, but I'll stop at two. And another thing is, with this stormwater runoff, I heard you say it was going to run into the creek, Farm Creek, eventually, right?
It ends up running into that diversion channel that's right there, yes, Bob.
Okay. Now, when down the road, you know and I know that the Illinois EPA is going to demand, because they've already done it across the river, as I understand, that we treat this stormwater runoff one way or the other. So is this diversion that you're going to run this into until they come down on us like gangbusters, okay, is it going to be done in such a manner that when the time comes, I'm going to use the term pipe, we hook onto a pipe, run it over to the stormwater system so it can be treated before it dumps in the Illinois River, because Farm Creek, the way I understand it, when I've read, that we're not supposed to, because all this that runs off out here has got oil and gas and whatever else that's fell off the cars, ice, and we're dumping it in the creek and turning in the river, and it's not supposed to be done that way. Can we do it right now? Evidently, we're getting away with it. But somewhere down the road, you know, we're going to have to pay the piper. Now, if I'm way off on this, somebody throw a rock at me like somebody else said, and I'll take it if I got it coming.
Bob, we are currently functioning under our current MPDES permit, which allows us to monitor that discharge by the IEPA. We are not adding anything new to the Farm Creek diversion channel. It's actually existing piping. We're going to be collecting what is coming off of that street now that's going, on one side it's going into a ditch, the other side It just kind of goes in the parking lot or wherever it wants to go, and we will be collecting that and then diverting it into there. But we will be following our current guidelines for being able to collect that. And as long as we keep it separate from our sanitary sewer at this time and keep our MPDES permit active and functioning, we do not have to treat that.
No, we don't right now. That's not, maybe I said it wrong. What I'm referring to is we're gonna spend this money to get this done, right?
Yes.
Okay, now, down the road, 5, 10 years, or 3 years, or whenever the EPA decides to get picky, okay, is this gonna be put in such a manner that it isn't going to cost another road and another complete total remodel to get that water from where it's going to go now to where it's got to go to the sewer treatment plant?
I can't speak as to what the future requirements may be. All I can tell you is we are meeting what our current requirements are and what our current needs are. This amount we're talking about on this small section of Altorfer is not going to be one of the large projects that we're going to have to address. We're going to have, if that becomes a mandate, we're going to have to do that. Peoria ended up mandated because they have combined sewers and they don't keep their stormwater and their sanitary separate. So that's part of the issues. We don't have that same issue.
Okay, then why, when I lived on Meadows, did the city have the sewer smoked and come up there and tell me, and I did.
Hey, Bob, just real quick. Don't have the magical answer on the stormwater thing. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds. But the splash pad, I'm glad you brought that up because I've followed some comments on social media. Make no mistake, the splashdown is the park district. And I think the director, Mike Johnson, has spoken many times as to why that was closed. That is not the city. So I hope people understand that is completely separate from the city. This park, and this is the parcel out here where that projected park is located, that's the East Peoria Community Foundation, which is all private funding that is seeking the grant. But it had to take council action. It had to be ran through the council to apply for that grant. But those are private dollars. Now, the upkeep and the long-term maintenance of it, those details have yet to be ironed out. And I don't know if that's going to be a combination of the park and the city. All that still has to be worked out, and there's no guarantees they're going to get the grant. So that project may or may not move forward. But that's, wasn't like anybody who tried to secretly slide something in there. There's been, for many years, talk of putting some type of focal point park down here that would attract people to our downtown area. And it goes into quality of life, but I just want it, for the record, be clear, that's two separate
Well, I'm in
entities.
favor of you putting the public toilets in. I mean, I have to admit that.
Yeah.
And personally, I'd like to see them all over town. The rest of the world, even the third world countries, have got them. And I don't see nothing wrong with the toilets. The other part, it ain't worked all over town in the Tri-County area. I think it's a waste of money. But it will get them people's name on that brass plaque that says, "Hurrah for me." I thought I'd better throw that.
There's no one trying to do that, I can assure you. Thank you, though. Any other comments?
How you doing, council?
Hey, Jamie.
Jamie?
Kind of want to piggyback on where Bill was at with code and how things are, and a set of rules that's set up that goes amongst the council to be imposed. I don't see all this process being there if a person can change those or alter those or imply those in different areas. As he said, that truck business I butt up against him is right in our backyard. It's a proof of that. You turn around and you say, this ain't what we want to see in this neighborhood, but you turn around and you see it on the opposite side. I do know there's been changes on the code. I was imposed. I've done the demo on Splashdown, did the Richland School, helped with Tyler the Silo down here. And the demo contract, ordinance 4350, has been changed 4 different times. One to alter. It was imposed on me before it ever went to any view of anybody of law or education or of that hazmat there, which I have a hazmat supervisor license. And then as the code was negotiated, Then a code was used to try to retaliate on that. I don't see why this will be put up with it. I've kind of discussed with all you except for Steph about this. And Bill has talked, and I know if you're proceeding forward, you work together, and I know we've worked hard in that neighborhood. I've worked with Christine and Lesk and whoever to try to go forward. But if you have a set of rules that are adjustable, if you go to that ordinance and you look, there is an ink pen marking out some of that ordinance, and then a date changed on it. Non-binding, it's on your website. I mean, that date's changed back on a purpose to try to impose a rule that was imposed on somebody that wasn't even in front of the council yet. So, I mean, to go on the site and be able to do that, I figure due process should be done on that. I don't like to cause issues. I like to know the rules of the game and play the game. I try to play it with the rules. But you play out and then all of a sudden the rules change mid-game. That's not really getting anywhere. It's losing credibility. It's losing a lot of this, then becomes weightless because, I mean, you say something, you put it in writing, and then it can be changed by somebody exempt from coming here to get it changed. It means nothing. I mean, you look at it and you go down and try to convince a neighborhood, needs improved, has for years, been neglected for years. I understand that, and there's been a team put together. The teams fell apart. The neighborhood meetings fell apart. It's all kind of devoured because you have adjustable something and you don't stand strong as a team. How do you ever enforce that? I mean, I've looked at it thoroughly, and it's kind of got under my nerve that, you know, I've put a lot of weight. I put everything equal to anybody that volunteered down there. I put equal or above that. Volunteer equipment, dump trucks, people put their stuff in it, tractor to pick it up to try to go forward. And it's went backwards. We've had 3 burglaries, a mob action, guy got hit with a pry bar, sliced up, guns stolen, guns found that was stolen down there. I mean, there's been meth and crack busted down there. And it's a backward slide, and people have lost faith in what's in writing because it can be changed. That's been changed multiple times. Not only then, but then after it's brought to the attention, hey, I am Supervisor Hazmat, endorsed with that, this is the way it's supposed to go, then they think you're questioning, and then they'll retaliate and come and tag something for the city attorney looked and said, no, that's right, you know. And so not only you get imposing something that's not there, you have somebody that's licensed that you're trying to impose something on. Took the Richland school down. I mean, they're the most regulated you could get. And then take a 1-bedroom house down, get imposed something that's you're going to violate your license doing, and you try to say, hey, this ain't, then you get retaliated on and have a vendetta there. I mean, that's something that's fell on deaf ears. Called for about an hour and a half from a department that said, hey, look at that post that's on the Richland site, take that down. And, you know, that's been 2 years ago. Read that post real clear. And there's documentation to show that that's exactly what's taking place, and you don't get no weight or no support or no team. I don't care how strong of a player you have, if you don't have a whole team, it goes nowhere. And I've tried to go through each chain as to where Bill's at, to look at them codes to see where it is so you can play fair. But if you're playing unfair with that person, then what do you get? You lose credibility. And I think that's happened, and I'm proceeding forward. I've been working on this 6 months and have discussed with different individuals this and have documented it, studied the code intensely. There's actually on the city code, it states clearly anybody alters, deletes, or changes, or even messes with it, any which way, they can be held liable because you're out there to represent the city. And if you're misrepresenting, you're maliciously using your power, you're abusing your power. And that happened. It's happened over a couple of times, and it's got people aggravated. It's got people that, you know, you want to lose support. That's the best way to do it is, you know, by not being a man of your word or man of this code or whichever it is, you know. So just wanted to bring that out.
No, we appreciate your comments, and I know this is the new council, and just like anything else, there's probably room for improvement, but I know those discussions are ongoing, but I appreciate your comments. Anyone else wishing to address the council on a non-agenda item, please step forward. Mr. Bell?
How's everybody?
Good.
I've never been up here. I'm usually like on the Facebook thing, but I was here. I got a quick question. I'm not going to be here that long. East Washington Street, it looks great, fantastic over here. I was at all the meetings and stuff with zoning with Ty a long time ago. There was the engineering firm looked into that. I know Kroger's kind of bailed on that whole thing, but I was kind of wondering, are we ever going to do anything with the curbs down towards Springfield Road and the cleaners and are we gonna like redo the curbs or the pavement, or maybe like take that 4-lane that's kind of really narrow and make it 2 lanes with a turn lane, or maybe stripe it or something if we can't afford to like redo all that? I didn't know if there's anything in the works or if we've looked at anything.
Well, I know that project you spoke of, I know they had some meetings down there with all the business owners, and Ty can speak to that. That was, I don't know, a year or so, year and a half ago. And I believe it was Midwest, if I'm not mistaken, was part of that project. I don't know if that was just, a proposed, or I don't know where it's at. It's a good question.
So it was a conceptual design. It was working with the Midwest Engineering and working with it was an outgrowth of working with the business and property owners down there. And so the idea was to get something out there so that people could react to it and respond to it. I think that we found good support from the property owners and business owners down there to do some configuration changes. I think it really comes down to budget. We were hopeful that there would be some opportunity with the resurfacing of that segment of West Washington between the railroad tracks and Main Street. Unfortunately, there was a premium on there that just the prior council didn't feel we had the budget to accomplish restriping all the way down through that section of town. But it's certainly something that considers further review and attention, and really that's a conceptual design. If there were interest to pursue it, the next step is really to get into the kind of nuts and bolts and design it. What does that look like? So.
Yep, I was just asking. I haven't heard anything about it in a long time, so, and I'm like, well, I'll get up here and talk real quick.
That's a good question. Always good to see your smiling face.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks.
All right,
thanks.
thank you, Mr. Bell. Anyone else wish to address the council on a 9-agenda item? Seeing no one else. Comments from the council. Commissioner Decker.
I have a few things, Mayor. First of all, is what Don was talking about, West Washington. I've seen those posts recently, and I know there has been some discussion about the possibility of lowering it to, I know 3 lanes have been discussed, I know 2 lanes have been discussed, and what I've heard from, whether it be business people, Public Works Department, other people around the area, it's kind of torn. I think everybody likes the idea of it becoming a community, how can I describe it, like a small town feel, and they believe that it would attract people to those businesses. And I didn't know where it had gone as well. Ty, is the group that was meeting, is that still an ongoing group that is meeting once in a while to talk about?
If they are, it's not been anything that we've been actively facilitating.
Okay, all right. And that was, watching your posts over the last couple of weeks, I've been meaning to ask Ty that, so I appreciate you mentioning it tonight. So I think we should find out what the public would like us to do, which direction we would prefer to go. It is narrow through there, and sometimes very dangerous. I mean, not long ago, down from that a little ways, there was a fatal accident. So, and I think we want to make it as safe as possible. I have a couple other quick things. As far as the recycled issue goes, I think I would be happy if we scheduled a working session. I'll leave it up for whenever. I believe I am going to be not attending. I think I'm going on the honor flight again on September 24th, but otherwise I'd be happy to help work on that if we can put that in front of the public. So I'll work with Dennis and you, Mayor, see when we can schedule that and give people as much notice as possible. Finally, the last thing I have, Mr. Mayor, I move that a closed meeting or session of the City Council be held at the conclusion of this regular meeting to discuss the following matter or matters according to exceptions provided in the Open Meetings Act and specified as follows. Section 2C6, the setting of a price for a sale or lease of property owned by the public body.
I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mingus.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Very good, thank you.
The only other thing I'd like to say, Mayor, I'm sorry, as we move forward toward the decision on the marijuana issue, I just invite anybody to reach out to me. I appreciate the people that spoke tonight, but I did kind of wonder how people felt that didn't speak, and that's okay. Some people don't like to talk in public. That's fine. Please feel free to reach out. I'd just like to know what the public feels.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Hill?
Yeah, just one comment. Actually, it goes off of Commissioner Decker's comment that there's a Facebook group out there, if you grew up in East Peoria now. I look at that as a place of people sharing memories and, history, and then all of a sudden my wife informs me, hey, there's some people complaining a lot and heavy out there about the city and the city condition and the city council. And so my point is that, much like Commissioner Decker here, please get a hold of us. If we're not monitoring, which I don't monitor that particular site for city complaints, there was an abundant amount of, we don't like this, it's not maintained here, the bell tower, the car washes, I read 260 some comments that were all in that complaint thread. So there's some good thoughts and there's some inaccurate information that we would be definitely willing to discuss with anybody. But had we not known it was there, we can't address any of those. So I would encourage you to send us an email. Our phone numbers are published out on the website, so please get a hold of us so we can address those. That's it, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Sutherland?
I got a couple things. I want to kind of read this and explain it the way I think I see it, just to tell you how crazy the state is. The state on this cannabis summary is promoting equity, okay? And that basically means that in the poor parts of Peoria, I'm going to pick on Peoria, sorry, and even if you've been arrested and put in prison for drugs, the state is going to a creation of a $30 million low-interest loan program ran by DCEO will administer a low-interest loan program for qualified social equity applicants to help them defray the startup costs associated with entering the licensed cannabis industry. So just think about this for just a second. You have the state not only allowing the sale of cannabis just to get high, but they're actually in the banking industry of putting felons in charge of a cannabis industry. I have a problem with this. I have a problem with the whole setup. I've already said where I stand, and a lot of it has to do with personal reasons. But I will say that there's some things about this that just doesn't make any sense. It just don't pass the sniff test to me across the board. And Bob, I'm going to have to say, and to you guys and down in the bottoms, East Peoria, the older part of town, including the bottoms, has some very narrow and long lots all around us here and heading out toward the high school, and usually they're at the bottom of the hill, which were the first places that people built houses was in the easy place to build. I mean, everywhere in East Peoria, you're either going up a hill or down a hill. Well, the first people that came here, they stayed down. They didn't go up. So they put a lot of people in a small area. So you guys, every time you guys want to do something, you're either stifled by rules and regulations that were meant for the new subdivisions, which is tough, and that's a hard thing to do. But I think that with some common sense, everything can be overcome because, you can write an 80-page letter on how to get across a damn street, and you'll still come up with some more pages because something else will come up. There's got to be some common sense in how we do things, because in years past, the city of East Peoria did not allow the bottoms to even get a building permit to improve their homes because they thought that Caterpillar was going to buy everything up, and it was kind of a back shady deal that I grew up with as a kid, and I knew all about it. And now Caterpillar's not building, and now the bottoms and the older sections of town are stuck improving their areas. And I've always felt that the city shouldn't eat its own. I don't think we should have people out there driving around looking for somebody that's doesn't have enough money to fix their roof and doesn't have enough money to do this or that, that lives in an area that has been blighted because of those rules and regulations. So I think that if somebody's going to be driving around and they're going to just stop and say, okay, I'm going to give you a citation because of something I see, it should be because they should have gotten a permit to do with what they're doing, whether it's putting a roof on a house or something that has to actually create a permit. But if somebody's doing the best that they can, unless there's a complaint by a neighbor, I just have a problem with the city eating its own. And Bob has started out this. The city of Peoria does have a rain tax, and it's because of the older part of Peoria is they put their gutters, their storm sewer, the stuff off the curbs and off of your yards into the sanitary system. So that means that they have to treat it as though it's urine and human feces down at the treatment plant, which is costing them $1 billion. Well, the government gave them $1 billion a few years back, and they didn't spend it like they were supposed to. Now they're charging everybody a rain tax because they didn't spend their money like they were supposed to. So having said that, that won't happen in East Peoria. I don't see that this council is heading that direction whatsoever, and you know I'm not. That's it.
Okay, Commissioner Mangus.
I have two quick announcements, Your Honor. Just wanted to congratulate the fire department. They received a $2,000 Ameren Cares grant to put a smart board and projector in the Felipe building to be used for training. And also wanted to announce that the fire department is selling breast cancer awareness shirts to benefit the Susan G. Komen Foundation. They can be purchased at Eastside through, I believe, 5 o'clock, September 15th. I'm not cheap if you can correct me, but I believe that's the correct time and date.
Correct.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Very good. Just a couple brief things. The 31st annual duck race will be held up at Eastside this coming Saturday. Fun begins at 4, race begins at 6 p.m. I looked on Center for Prevention of Abuse website today. 85% of their 30,000 duck goal has been met. So let's bring in the additional 15%. Hopefully they can achieve their goal, but should be a good time. And then last but not least, Mrs. Whitman's in the audience, and appreciate her being here, and I offered to read this tonight. For those that have never done this, it's a really cool thing, and the kids really appreciate it. So, for everybody out there, including members of the council, you're invited to celebrate the new school year and be part of 100 Caring Adults. Please join Lincoln staff and students on August 21st, which is tomorrow, as they head into a new school year. 100 Caring Adults will cheer on staff and students as they head from the gym to their classrooms for the first time of the 1920 school year. Please help show your Lincoln Lions that their community cares about their success and is behind them. Let's see, meet at the school at 8:45 a.m. Students will be dismissed from the gym cafeteria, and then they break out into their classrooms. You'll be lined up, and you high-five them and cheer them, and it's a big deal for these kids. I think it's pretty cool. And then announcements begin at 8:50. So if you can, please park in the back of the building. This is Lincoln School, and you'll be let through the back doors. And any questions, please contact Nikki Combs. She's the principal at comesn@epd86.org. So for those of you that are interested in putting a smile on their face as they go back to school, it's a pretty neat deal. So that's all I have. Seek a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, before I adjourn, speaking of school, Chief, I had 2 or 3 phone calls, and I think I said it right, but the people were asking about stopping, going the opposite direction on East Washington Street, like starting down there from Route 150 all the way up through Sunnyland. If a bus stops going the other direction, were they supposed to stop or not? Because there's school started, there's a little bit of confusion.
when you have a two-lane road, when you have a bus and then vehicle travel basically in the lane next to it, at that point in time, all traffic has to stop for the stop arm. Whenever you have a four-lane road and/or a divided highway, traffic going the same way as the bus has to stop, but oncoming traffic towards them does not have to stop. That's on, as I said, basically a four-lane road and/or a divided highway. But anytime you have two single lanes is when all vehicles have to stop. The one thing we ask too, especially, is just even when you do see that stop arm, you do not have to stop if you're coming in the opposite direction on that four-lane road, but please be careful, slow down. Some of the biggest questions is when buses are stopped and they have their yellow hazard flashing lights on, you are able to pass that bus, but one of the things that means at some point in time that stop arm could come out at any time. So if you do pass a bus that has this yellow hazard flashing lights on, please slow down because that stop arm could come out. But once again, as I said, if it's a two-lane road, meaning oncoming traffic right next to the bus, anytime that stop arm's out, that's when they have to stop. But a four-lane or a divided highway, traffic coming opposing does not have to stop, but all traffic going the same way as a bus does have to stop.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn until Tuesday evening, September 3rd, 2019 at 6 p.m.
May I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Mingus. Roll call?
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus? Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Very good. Until we meet again, we are adjourned.